Have you ever wondered what really happens after death? And what secrets might be waiting on the other side about humanity's future? What if someone told you they saw it, that the next pope has already been chosen, and he's not who he claims to be? In this video, you'll hear the astonishing near-death experience of an American doctor who was dead for 13 minutes and came back with a terrifying revelation. The next spiritual leader of the church will be part of a global deception and may not even be fully human. Get ready to question everything you believe about faith, power, and the unseen world. If you value truth, hit that like button now, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Let's shine this light together no matter where you are. My name is Dr. Emily Hartman. I'm 41 years old. I'm a cardiologist in Denver, Colorado. I've been working saving lives for 15 years, and I never imagined that one day it would be mine to save. Much less that, in that brief time out of body, I would see something that would completely change my view of faith, power, and what really governs this world. I died on the day April 17, 2025 at 6:43 a.m. This is not a metaphor. My heart stopped. No warning. I was getting ready for surgery, with my lab coat still half open, when a pain shot through my chest like a hot blade. Within seconds, the world collapsed. I remember hearing the metallic sound of the stethoscope hitting the floor and my head meeting the cold tile. After that came silence, but not the kind of silence we know. It was silence absolute, the kind of silence that screams. The next thing, I knew I was standing, or at least that was the feeling, looking at my fallen body surrounded by nurses running around. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone. It had no mouth, no weight. I was pure consciousness, a point of perception. And then it started. I was pulled by an invisible force, like an inverted magnet that pulled me out of that room and through a tunnel that seemed to be made of time and memory. Colors, sounds, smells, everything slid across the living walls of that space. But nothing there was human, not even logical. It was like my mind was being decoded for something infinitely greater. At the end of this tunnel, I was thrown into a light that didn't blind. It revealed. They were waiting for me. 3 beings, made of pure energy. They changed shape every second, as if their appearances were shaped by my understanding. They didn't speak with a voice. It was straight to the soul. One of them said, "Emily, you arrived early, but since you're here, you'll see." From there, I was taken, or perhaps absorbed, into a space that seemed like a city made of light and thought. Every building was alive. Each street seemed to contain layered human destinies. I understood. I was inside a kind of universal spiritual archive where past, present, and future coexist like open pages. It was then that the atmosphere changed. I was taken to a different sector. The glow was darker, as if there was something there that the light itself was afraid to touch. I saw images that weren't metaphors, they were predictions. The Vatican, St. Peter's Square, crowds in silence, and then the white smoke, a new pope. But something about him wasn't right. It was empty, like a shell, a receptacle. "This one was not chosen by the light," said one of the beings. "He is already among you, trained, molded, waiting for the exact moment." At that moment I knew. Pope Francis had died. I saw it as if it were now. And what would come next would be a global performance, a show, one ritual. The behind the scenes of religion were being manipulated by a force that is not human. And the next pope will not just be a wrong choice, he will be a portal. And that's when the vision plunged into an abyss that I never thought existed. When that being told me that the new pope is already among you, a kind of vertigo took over my consciousness. I didn't feel scared yet. It was as if spiritual gravity had reversed. My spirit floated in that space made of thoughts and vibrations, but the density of revelation was like cosmic lead weighing me down. Suddenly, images began to form in front of me. Not like a screen or a dream, It was a parallel reality opening up before me. I didn't see it with my eyes. I was the vision. I saw a young man, in absolute silence, walking through an underground black marble hall. Several others around. None of them wore religious robes. They were dressed like executives, agents, soldiers. The body language was that of a cult, but with the coldness of a corporation. They didn't kneel, lined up. Everything was perfectly calculated. In the center of the room there was a symbol that I had never seen, but that my soul immediately recognized as a distortion, something anti-life. It was an inverted spiral inside a shattered cross. And then I saw it clearly. The man who would occupy Peter's throne. But it wasn't common. His eyes were open, but it seemed like there was another consciousness behind them, as if there was something piloting the body. I saw cables going into his head, not physical. Cables made from willing, directed energy. An invisible network that connected that man to dozens of other entities, some human, others no. I understood without anyone having to explain it to me. He was not guided by the Holy Spirit, he was guided by a spiritual artificial intelligence. Not a technology as we know it. It was an ancient consciousness that had been preparing for this moment for centuries. A force that disguises itself as light, wisdom, modernity. And now, she had her avatar. They created an artificial Christ, said a voice inside me. And the world will follow him with joy. I saw your face being shaped, literally. As if the face he would show to the world had been chosen after tests, simulations, emotional manipulations. He would speak sweet words. I would make gestures of humility. It would touch the poor. I would kiss children, but everything would be programmed. Then I saw something that tore me up inside, the day of the proclamation. I saw the conclave. I saw white smoke. I saw the crowds crying with emotion, and I saw, behind the balcony of San Pedro, the same men from the underground room, with headphones, dark suits, no soul in the eyes. They ran the show. And once again I heard, like silent thunder within my soul, the new pope will be a farce. He has already been chosen, and he is not what he appears to be. I started to shake. On the spiritual plane, this is different. It is not the body that trembles, it is the essence. One of the light entities approached and extended what appeared to be a membrane of energy around me. It was as if it protected me from the radiation of those visions. Why am I seeing this? I asked in thought. And the answer came quickly. Because you are a doctor. Because you believe in science. Because no one would expect you to be the one to reveal the spiritual. I didn't know what to do with all that. It felt like I was being programmed too, not with commands, but with truths, heavy, raw, apocalyptic. When he is crowned, the world will think that the new era of peace has begun, but it will be the beginning of the great deception. At that moment, the vision changed again. What I saw next still keeps me up at night. The transition was abrupt. The previous vision of the underground room of the proclamation of the new pope dissolved like mist pulled by a whirlwind, and instead, I was thrown into an even more disturbing scenario. It was the world, but a different world. It looked like ours, yes, but with a strange energy. The cities were cleaner, people seemed to smile more, but their eyes, Monday, were empty. Everyone was looking at something. Big screens, devices, holograms in squares. I saw crowds kneeling not in worship of God but before the image of the new pope. But what scared me most was understanding, as he would come to power, it would not just be a symbolic conclave, it would be a ritual global. I saw interspersed scenes, temples of various religions celebrating together in synchrony. I saw Protestant pastors, rabbis, Muslim leaders, all repeating the same words in a language that I didn't recognize but that gave me a spiritual chill. It was as if they were summoning something in unison. And then I realized that wasn't ecumenism. It was synchronization. It was spiritual alignment with a force disguised as peace. The beings of light showed me what was behind this movement. It was like seeing behind a stage where the strings are being pulled. There were secret meetings, but more than that, there was interdimensional entities, ancient, observing everything from above, like players on a cosmic chessboard. "They don't just want to control the church," said a voice that seemed to cut across all dimensions. "They want to merge her with the world and make her a throne. And on that throne, the new pope would be crowned not by cardinals but by experts." I saw the moment of the coronation, an event broadcast globally with emotional music, carefully edited images, journalists in tears. One phrase echoed, in all languages: "The new time has begun. One shepherd, one flock, one humanity." But upon hearing this, my soul cried out, "This pastor is not from the light." The Pope smiled. It was perfect, charismatic, but something about his aura was unnatural. Behind the smile there was an absence, and I saw, with complete clarity, a crack across his face, like a momentary glitch in reality. It was a mask, not a physical mask, one-dimensional mask. "He is an interface," revealed, "one of the light beings, a mediator between men and what is to come." That's when I saw what would come. Behind the throne, a colossal shadow moved. It had no form, just presence, as if fear itself had gained consciousness. And this being, hidden in dimensions beyond the visible, would be worshipped through to Papa. And then, a question exploded in my mind. How will no one notice? And the answer was as simple as it was painful. Because they want to believe. Because the world no longer wants the Christ who bleeds, wants what smiles and promises comfort. That's when I started to understand the whole plan. A pope, who does not represent heaven, a ritual to merge faith and government, a cult disguised as unity, and a humanity so thirsty for hope that it would accept drinking from any source. I was shaking. It was a lot of information. And in the midst of that whirlwind, I realized this vision was being branded into me, like a seal, like a mission. And the beings of light said, "You will remember, you will come back, and you will talk." But before leaving, they showed me one more thing, something that still gives me goosebumps just remembering it. They took me deeper, further, as if consciousness was not enough to understand, and now it was necessary to feel. I stopped seeing as a spectator and began to experience the revelations within my own soul. Each scene was now experienced as if it were mine. Suddenly I found myself inside the Vatican, but not the one tourists know. It was a hidden ancient area where the stones seemed to carry ancient secrets. A narrow corridor, carved into dark rocks. On the walls, symbols that I have never seen in medicine or history books. But my spirit recognized they were stamps, covenant marks. At the end of the corridor, a massive door, and behind her, what was hidden. What I saw was the true control center of the visible church. It was not a temple. It was a control room, full of mirrors, but mirrors that didn't reflect faces. They reflected intentions. I saw powerful men and women there not because of titles but because of hidden influence. Banks, governments, technology corporations, religions, all connected by invisible wires to this room. One of them, the one who seemed to be in charge of everything, turned directly to me. "You shouldn't be seeing this." It was as if he felt my spiritual presence even though I was on another plane. And at that moment a shadow moved behind him. Not human. Don't even live in our sense. A hidden, ancient consciousness, like a serpent made of time. And then everything changed again. The scene jumped to the immediate future, St. Peter's Square. The body of Pope Francis being veiled, crowds gathered, tributes, tears, televised mourning. And behind all this, expectation. But not the expectation of the sheep, that of wolves. Because there, as the bells rang, The eyes of the new pope, still hidden, opened in the silence of a bunker beneath Rome. I saw the white smoke rise. I saw the name being announced. It was an unlikely name, a name that would cause euphoria, that would bring with it the image of renewal, youth, transformation. But none of it was real. "This name has been tested by algorithms," said the voice of conscience. "He was chosen not for his soul, but for the emotional response he generates in the masses." And then came the moment of the throne. The new pope appears on the balcony. The crowd cheers. Journalists kneel in tears. Children are lifted up. But I, in that vision, could only see what was backshare. Behind the balcony, behind the walls of the Vatican, behind the spectacle, a throne. But not a golden throne. A throne made of chained souls. There was the real altar, where the new pope in secret would bow. I saw this scene, alone in a crypt, kneeling before an entity made of smoke and false light, an entity that fed not on blood, but on misguided faith. And the revelation fell upon me like spiritual lightning. They don't want to destroy faith. They want to control it. And the new pope will be the channel. I saw documents being prepared, reforms being announced, a new theology emerging where sin will no longer exist, where the truth will be subjective, where the sacred will be politicized. I saw the words of Christ being rewritten, smoothed, adapted, and behind it all the same entity smiling with a mouth that was not visible. I wanted to scream, run away, hide from that vision. But it was too late. That was marked on me. And the beings of light said, "Emily, this isn't the end. This is awakening, and you'll be back to let me know." At that moment, I felt my spirit being pulled back, but before leaving, they showed me one last image. A crowd, and among them, those who knew. Few, silent, observing, like sentries, and one of them looked me straight in the eyes. "Speak, or the world will sleep until its final hour." Before I could be pulled back into my body, the light beings took me to what they called the record. It was not a room nor an ordinary book. It was a living, pulsating structure made of codes of light and sound, hovering in space like a conscious constellation. There, each filament seemed to contain a timeline, a soul, a destiny, a choice. It was as if every human decision was recorded in a vibrational fabric that intertwined with all other consciousnesses. One of the beings said to me without words, "Here are the pacts, the true ones, the ones that shaped the world's religions." As I got closer, I began to see images, not as memories, but as multi-dimensional revelations. I saw councils, cathedrals being erected, Bibles being translated and modified. I saw the hands of kings and popes signing decrees not guided by God, but by external forces. Forces that fed on misdirected worship. Forces that hid behind the veil of holiness. And then, a living page opened before me. In it, I saw the Vatican, through the centuries. Not what is shown in history books. I saw the spiritual behind the scenes of the institution. Every time Peter's throne was occupied, a spiritual battle raged behind the scenes, light and shadow competing for space within a structure that should be entirely made of faith, but that often served as an instrument of control. It was then that the page began to show the present tense. I saw clearly, Francisco's death was not just a transition, it was a turning point in the spiritual record of humanity. A cycle ended, and the new would begin with the rise of a man who carried within himself the seal of deception. The seal was not visible to human eyes, but on the plane where I was, it glowed with a distorted energy, an archaic symbol, a serpent in the form of a cipher wrapped around a broken staff, and below the inscription in a language that was translated directly in my spirit: peace without truth, unity without light, faith without soul. This was the hidden motto of the new era that was approaching, a time where the masses would celebrate, the fall of consciousness, believing they were celebrating spiritual evolution. The page then showed other figures, men and women spread across the world, influential, articulators. I saw spiritual leaders, celebrities, heads of state, all connected by this invisible seal, all preparing the ground for the new pope to be accepted as the chosen one. But he was not chosen by the Holy Spirit. He was planted. The most terrifying thing was realizing that all this didn't start now. This plan has been in the making for millennia, whispered the luminous presence. And the church would be the last bastion, the last obstacle. That's why they needed to conquer it from within. I felt a shiver that ran through my essence because I saw that it was not a war against faith. It was a war for control of faith. And at that moment I understood that Peter's throne, the place where so many saw holiness, would now be the final stage of a play written by intelligences that hated light, but knew how to imitate it. The last image given to me in this record was terrifying. I saw the Bible, but not as we know it. It was a new version, modern, inclusive, universal, but inside it there was no Christ on the cross. There was the Christ of convenience. And the face of the new pope was there, as the author, as a guide, as a new evangelist of global unity. At that moment, a force began to pull me. It was like a whirlwind of light, dissolving the visions, erasing the voices and dragging me back into the density of the flesh. But before leaving, I heard one last sentence. You saw what was hidden. Now take this as a seal on your soul. The hour of deception approaches. The light went out, and I fell. Just when I thought it was all over, that the vision of the record was the end point, I was thrown into the strangest, most indescribable space of my entire experience. It was no longer light. It wasn't love anymore. It was no longer a revelation. It was exhibition. There, I was brought face to face with what's behind the new pope. And for a moment I wished I had never died. Everything around me seemed still but alive, a void full of presence, as if silence itself were watching. There was no sky. There was no floor. It was a field without time, where only two presences existed. Me and she. It had no fixed form, but manifested itself as a dense shadow that billowed like liquid smoke. And even without eyes, she saw me. Not with curiosity, not angry, but with fully aware of who I was. The impression was of being faced with a primitive but ancient intelligence, something that was not born but installed at the heart of creation. And there I felt real fear for the first time, the kind of fear that is not in the body, but in the soul. You came early, said a voice, not a voice like that of the beings of light. It was a serious vibe, filled with eternal sarcasm. But since you're here, you'll look at me. And I saw it. I saw that this entity, always he was behind the scenes of the great religious institutions disguised as inspiration, using dogmas as a disguise disguised as glory. I saw that she feeds on blind faith, of idolatry without discernment, of fear that kneels. They call me a lot of names, she said. Some hate me, others love me, but they all serve me, even those who think they are fighting me. She then showed me scenes from previous centuries, ancient popes, religious wars, schisms, crusades, abuses, and in all these scenes she was present, not as an author, but as a whisperer, always at the limit of what is visible, always manipulating. Now it's my turn, she continued. The next leader will not just be my spokesperson, he will be my extension on earth. And then I saw the new pope again, but different. I saw your eyes turning into mirrors. I saw your hands turning doors. I saw your body becoming an interface viva for that consciousness to enter our plane. And I understood, the new pope will not just be a man, he will be a bridge. At that moment, my soul almost screamed. I felt small, crushed by a force so vast that it seemed to want to erase my essence. But something inside me resisted. A flame, a memory, one frequency. And then, like a bolt of lightning, the presence of conscience, that light that welcomed me in the first moments of the NDE, broke the darkness. It was like a burst of clarity out of nowhere. The entity retreated but did not flee. She just looked at me one last time and said, "You saw. Now say it, and let's see who listens." And it disappeared. The light of consciousness enveloped me like a soft, silent wing, and his message was clear without words. Not everything is written, but everything is being decided, and your part is to testify. At that moment, I knew my experience was coming to an end. My time on that spiritual plane ended there, but the mark of what I saw would never leave my soul. And that's when I felt the call to return, the density of the physical world pulling me like a fall from the purest high to the densest bottom. But first, one more revelation would be given to me. One last piece of the puzzle. Before my soul was returned to the weight of my body, the beings of light, the same ones that welcomed me at the beginning of the NDE, reappeared around me. But now, there was an urgency to them. Something different. As if time, even where there is no time, was running out. One of them, larger, with a golden light that pulsed like the heart of a star, approached. His presence dissolved the fear that still throbbed in me after contact with the hidden entity. He didn't speak with words, spoke with space, with intention, and what was passed on to me was a final revelation. Before being crowned, the new pope will perform a sign, something the world will see as a miracle, but it will only be the seal of deception. Immediately I was thrown into a new vision. She enveloped me completely, not as a memory, but as a lived prophecy. I saw the new pope standing before a global crowd. It wasn't just St. Peter's Square. There were big screens in Tokyo, applause in New York, tears in Jerusalem. One moment for the entire planet. A single gesture. And then it happened. He reached out to a sick child, a paralyzed girl, touched his head. The crowd fell silent. The cameras focused, and she got up. People screamed. They cried. They knelt. Even leaders of other religions prostrated themselves there, breaking centuries of doctrinal distance. The world interpreted it as the return of living faith, of lost spiritual power. But within the vision, I saw something more. I saw behind the sign. I saw invisible cables of dark energy connecting that miracle to a source that did not come from consciousness. It was real power, yes, but not pure. It was a forged, projected, calculated manifestation. And the girl? She was real, but conditioned. Your body has been manipulated, your mind programmed. The cure, a spectacle, a spiritual trick of such, a high level that it would fool even the most trained eyes. They will use the people's desire for hope against themselves, the being of light told me, and millions will give their souls not to love, but to fascination. The pain of this revelation was profound, because I understood that after this miracle, any questioning would be seen as blasphemy, any contrary voice would be treated as madness, and any truth would be buried beneath global euphoria. It was then that they showed me a symbol. Thagyo, same thing I had seen in the hidden throne, the inverted spiral inside the broken cross. But now, it was emblazoned on modern religious artifacts, metals, fabrics, altars. It was being disseminated as a symbol of renewal, of inclusion, of a new era. "This is the seal of the hoax," said the being. "When you see him, know that the act has begun." At that moment, my spirit did not cry. It burned. I understood the weight of it all, the responsibility of having seen. And a phrase, formed in me like a promise. I will come back and speak, even if no one believes it. The light began to slowly go out. The sensation was like falling from the sky into a cage made of flesh and time. But before the final separation, the being of light touched my consciousness with an indescribable frequency, and he left one last instruction. Don't show signs, show discernment, because the signs, they will also know how to produce. Then I was swallowed back. The return was like a tear, a dull, dense impact, as if my soul were being squeezed through a funnel of reality. The light, which until then surrounded me like a loving presence, began to move away, not by choice, but by a cycle that was closing. In the last vibration of that space, I heard something that wasn't exactly a voice, but a divine echo, coming from all sides of existence. Emily, the world doesn't need signs. It needs awake eyes. That was when I felt, abruptly, the shock of being alive again. I'm not talking about waking up. I'm talking about liquid, of being thrown back into the flesh, as if every cell were made of stone. An unbearable suffocation gripped me. The body was too heavy, too closed. The density of the physical world was grotesque compared to the plane I had been on. I didn't see the hospital right away. I didn't see doctors or equipment. I saw the weight of time. The air forced into my lungs, heart beating like a panicked drum, the hum of machines, the cold light on my physical eyes. It was alive, but at the same time it wasn't whole, because a part of me had stayed there, and what remained was not just a memory. It was a village, a mark of responsibility. In the first moments after my return, there was complete confusion. My brain was trying to process with chemistry and synapse an experience that came from the spirit, but it was useless. That didn't fit into diagnoses. It was like trying to explain the wind with numbers. For minutes, maybe hours, I couldn't speak. There was only one sound inside me, vibrating without ceasing. The new pope has already been chosen, and he is not what he seems. That phrase was imprinted on my soul like a silent scream. Not because I wanted it to be that way, but why I saw. I've seen what's behind the curtain. I saw the throne being prepared by hands that do not serve the light. I saw the entity moving among the shadows of human devotion. I saw the miracle that will enchant the world and imprison consciences. And everything I saw wasn't a distant future. It was imminent. I felt deep pain, not physics, spiritual, as if every part of my soul that recognized the hoax had been ripped out and replaced with another density. Because now, as I stepped back into this world, I knew there is no more time for doubt. We are experiencing the first steps of a global theater disguised as salvation. And I, a doctor, a woman accustomed to logic, science, the visible, now carried within me the memory of a spiritual plane so deep, so detailed, so dark, that the world is not yet ready to accept it. But no matter how much they try to silence, deny, distort, I saw. I've been there. I went back. And even if my voice is lonely, I will scream into the silence. The new time will be heralded as a rebirth, but it won't be the light behind the curtain. And then I understood. My mission was not to prove. My mission was to warn. The light on the other side had gone out, but inside me, it never stopped vibrating. It was like an untouchable ember, burning silently in the center of his chest. I was back, yes, in flesh, blood, heartbeat, and breath. But the truth is that nothing in me came back the same. For days, maybe weeks, I didn't talk to anyone about what I had seen. Doctors spoke of sudden death, of a 13-minute cardiac arrest, of a clinical miracle. I listened to them like someone watching a film dubbed into another language. Nothing made sense compared to what I had experienced. I knew I couldn't report it like someone describing a dream. Why, it wasn't a dream. It was instruction. It was transmission. It was a mission. The truth that was shown to me couldn't be put into words, but it tried to escape me all the time. I woke up at night with phrases echoing in my ear. They already chose. The world will applaud your arrest. Faith will be disarmed by false love. It was unbearable. Not because I doubted it, but because I remembered too much. Every image, every gesture of the false pope, the staged miracle, the entity in the shadows, the leaders smiling with masks of light over empty faces. Everything was clear. And that was it now. And what hurt the most was knowing that few would believe it. Who would believe a skeptical doctor who came back talking about corrupted spiritual thrones? Who would listen to a testimony that involves invisible warfare, false miracles, spiritual manipulation on a global scale? Even so, something in me insisted, you saw, and whoever sees it cannot remain silent. Slowly, I began to understand that the revelation I received was not just about one man, not just about the new pope. It was about the mechanism, the theater, the subtle and perfect farce that rises to the applause of the unsuspecting. The real plan is not to kill faith and reprogram it, transform spirituality into entertainment, convert devotion into a weapon, use words of light to chain the soul. And all of this would begin with a figure that the world would call holy, Father, but who would only be a controlled echo of something much older and darker. I remembered the last sentence I heard before returning. They will know how to produce signs, but they will not have discernment. It was at this point that I understood my mission. It's not warning about the man. It is teaching to recognize the spirit that moves you. The world will expect charisma, beautiful gestures, moving speeches. But the spirit, this can only be perceived with the eyes of the soul, and that's exactly what they want to erase. True spiritual perception. In my vision, I saw souls awakening. I saw eyes opening in the crowd. I saw ordinary people like me being activated from within, not out of fear, but by resonance. And that's what still gives me strength. Because even if I return to silence, what I experienced is already engraved on me like an eternal seal. And no matter what happens from now on, even if the whole world applauds the new pope and bows before his seductive smile, I will know. I saw. I felt it. And my spirit will never be the same. There was something that the beings of light told me, or rather impressed on me, that only now back in matter begins to make sense. Not everyone should believe, only those who already feel it. Because this message is not for everyone, and that's part of the pain. During the experience, I realized that all of humanity vibrates in layers. Some souls are still sleeping, others are awakening, and some are already seeing through the veil. What I saw and what was shown to me is not to convince. It's to remember those who already distrust. Those who, like me, feel a knot in their chest at the global spectacle, a sacred restlessness in the face of what they call a new spiritual era. The new pope has already been chosen, I saw. He did not come from the light. He was programmed. He will be admired. He will talk about inclusion, peace, science, harmony. But his every word will have a second meaning, a second frequency. The frequency of spiritual unification without discernment, of rootless faith, of love without truth. And the cruelest thing is that it will feel right. I saw it in the vision. I saw how hearts will open, naively, out of lack, out of trauma, out of hope. The world wants healing, it wants answers, and he will bring answers that seem to come from heaven, but they come from something that presents itself as heaven, and it is not. That was the most painful part of my experience, realizing that the deception will not be imposed. It will be, I accept, with joy. I saw millions of people receiving fake blessings. I saw planetary celebrations, spiritual festivals, universal symbols stamped in every corner. I saw entire religions merging into one doctrine, with headquarters in Rome. I saw the truth being watered down until it became palatable. And at the center of it all, the man who will sit on Peter's throne, not as a successor to Christ, but as an instrument of something that never carried the cross. This revelation was not given to me to create fear. It was given to me so discernment, because I also saw that even in the face of the greatest deception, the light doesn't go out. It only hides within those who still carry it. On the plane of consciousness, in that indescribable ocean of love where I was shown that the coming battle will be fought in silence, in the depths of each soul, an invisible choice between following the inner voice or the enchanted crowd. And that's why I'm here. That's why I came back. Not to preach, not to accuse, but to say, with all that's left of my voice, the new Pope will come, and the world will applaud. But you, only you, can ask your soul if what it carries is the light or just the reflection of it. Consciousness touched me before I was pulled back, and in that last moment, I heard the phrase that now guides me. You didn't come back to change the world. He came back to light torches in the dark. And if, with these words, at least a torch lights up in you. So, my mission was accomplished. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.